I'm Mike. I'm alcoholic. It's good to be here. First thing, I want to thank the committee for allowing me to tag along with my wife, who's speaking tonight. We're really grateful to be here with you guys. And thank you for the flowers. That was very kind. And it's good to see. I was excited to come here. We were up in FOTSW, Colorado, and we got to meet a bunch of you guys. And I could tell by the enthusiasm and what you guys were saying that you got something going on out here. And it's attractive. So I just did a meeting upstairs on, we only got like into the 10th step a little bit. I guess first, because I don't think I want to get into mechanics at this meeting. We just kind of did that upstairs. Maybe just share a little journey with you guys on how this stuff has changed in my life, how I looked at it at one point, and maybe how, I kind of having an experience with it today. When I first got sober in Cedar Rapids, it was, my sobriety date's October 4th, 1992, and I'm running around there. I've got a friend that I met in AA sponsored me, a guy that 12-stepped me in, so I'm calling two guys my sponsor. And I read the big book cover to cover in the last treatment center I was in. I got drunk the day I got out. So I knew reading the big book wasn't the solution, but I had this intuition, like something going on that, man, there's something about the big book that I need to be following. And so I kind of like took myself through it early on, which is how it's written, so we can do that. Honestly, that's why they did the book, so they could send it out. I could tell you stories that I've heard from guys who were the first member of Alcoholics Anonymous in their state, and they inquired to our foundation back then, and they sent them a big book. And they would send them a list of people that they knew that were close to them, maybe in another state, but were sober, so they could communicate with one another, mostly back then through letters, which started the Loners and Internationalists program. But that's the experience I had. I'm kind of like going through this myself, and I'm asking people pretty direct questions on what I should be doing. And I'm getting a lot of different answers. Seriously. Like, one guy tells me, well, they sell a bunch of step guides at the club. You should go buy those. And another guy tells me there's a meeting on Wednesday night it's a step meeting. They go through the 12 and 12, so you should go out there and maybe sit in that. Another guy says there's a bunch of old timers that go to this other meeting, go talk to them guys. And I did all that stuff. I didn't want to drink anymore when I got here, and I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore, and I couldn't stop doing either. And I'm a guy that was going to 3 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous a day drinking that night. I did that, I don't know how many times, 10, 15. I'd go to our local club and I'd sit there all day. Go to 3 meetings. You would think if meeting makers made it, that I would have had a chance. And I was just completely baffled by you guys' ability to flip some kind of a switch and be okay. Man, I was crazy. I'd go to 3 meetings a day, go get drunk, and stick a loaded pistol in my mouth when I got home. And when I sober up the next day, go to 3 more meetings, go home not wanting to drink, and stick that loaded pistol in my mouth sober. So I don't do good drinking and I don't do good sober. That's a sticky wicket. You know what I mean? That's a tough spot. I've come to understand it as a terribly good spot to be in, you know. And I liked what that girl was talking about with step 1. We ain't here to give you a bunch of hope. We're here to drive into you the hopelessness of your condition, right? I loved that first step talk. God, that was good. I liked all of them. This has been fantastic. So anyway, geez, 10 and 11, right? So the first couple years, that's what my sobriety looked like. I'm going through this stuff on my own, and I've got a bunch of old timers telling me things like, maybe you ought to just shut up and listen. And all I'm doing is sharing my experience with the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all I'm doing. And so I had a buddy of mine say that. I said, why don't you shut up and listen? And a couple people told me that, but I really listened to this guy. I like this guy. I respected him. And I did that too. For 30 days, I didn't speak in AA. And after 30 days, I went up to him and I said, hey, man, do you think I could start talking again in meetings? And he was like, what the hell are you talking about? He didn't even remember telling me that I should shut up and listen. But listening is important here. I think we could use some better listeners around here, you know. Pretty easy to run our mouths. So I hooked up with a guy. We have a roundup up there, the Cedar River Roundup, and my buddy, Bill, who's the same guy that told me to stop talking. My buddy Bill was hosting a guy. A lot of you guys know him or have heard of him. His name was Don. He's from Colorado. I didn't know anything about that guy. But he's the first guy that validated an experience that I had had in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was very cool. Don had us up to his room between the big meetings that were going on, and it was him and Keith Drum. They kind of tagged up on us, and those two were sitting on the edge of the bed, and there was 8 or 10 of us sitting along the wall just firing questions at these guys. And they had an answer for all of them. And they were the guys on, page 18 or whatever. They knew what they were talking about. Their whole department shouted at me that they're guys with real answers. They're not sitting there telling me, I don't know, maybe you should go over here to these people. They were, and I asked that guy, I called him, because when he spoke, he talked to us about, how he went through the Big Book with people. And, that was not happening in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in the early 90s. It was not. You didn't even see big books at meetings up there. I'm not making that up. People were staying sober, which speaks to the depths of the grace of God, I think. You know what I mean? Jeez. But so I hooked up with him and started a journey that really changed the trajectory of my life. I really miss him. He had a presence that was really sometimes I hear it said like he could make you feel like you were the only one in a room full of people. My friend Tom says he's the best member of Alcoholics Anonymous ever. I agree. Hands down. Yep. So we got into this stuff, and what that guy did is at 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 mornings a week, he read the Big Book to me. and I was a sponge. I called him right on time. He was clear about that. Don't be early to try and impress me, and don't be late. I called him at 6 o'clock, 2 or 3 mornings a week, and he started reading that book to me, and we did exactly what it said to do, and we had the experiences that are in here that it says we will have. It was unbelievable, the clarity that this guy spoke from. Just unbelievable to me. I don't think I can do it justice. So the example that was set there initially was the time that he was willing to give to me. And that's something that has always been demonstrated to me here. Men and women willing to give up to sacrifice their time, which is real important. The guy that 12-stepped me in didn't talk across the table from me like had been happening for a long time. He approached me after a meeting and shook my hand. He put his other hand on my shoulder and asked if I would like to go talk. And I didn't have any other plans, you know what I mean? So he said he'd buy me some coffee. I'm like, okay. And I think the reason I agreed to that is because there was something about his approach, like I knew he cared. I could sense that. And I hadn't had that feeling in a long time. I knew my family loved me, but they were done. And this guy cared. That guy had me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every night for the next 6 months. And the other examples like that. And Don spending 2 or 3 mornings a week at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's that kind of example. I like to talk about it in AA because for whatever reason, there's this thing in AA where we think we need to meet with people once a week, and I want to challenge that. I don't know where the hell that came from. I know there's a sentence in the book that talks about we meet once a week where new people can bring their problems, but that ain't talking about direct knee-to-knee stuff. And I think I work with people as often as I can. If it works out to be just once a week, that is what it is. But what we're going to do if we meet tonight at 8 is we're going to open our calendars and look for the very next available opportunity. If it's tomorrow at noon, it's tomorrow at noon. If it's 3 days from now, that's what it is. I think that's important. I have a vested interest in that kind of sponsorship because typically how we do things with guys and gals is how they're going to do it too. I got 4 boys. Their mom and me are chronic alcoholics. If they ever end up in your home group, I hope to hell you will have a little bit more for them than just keep coming back. Or I'll meet with you once a week. Let's meet every Wednesday at 6. So what you're telling me is you're going to give one of my sons an hour a week to try and treat a fatal malady, and you know it's fatal. I mean, what's up with that? You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm not even talking about 10, 11 here. So I called Don, and he's like, "What do you think you're missing?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "That's a pretty good answer," you know. And he started working with me, and the thing for me coming up with 10, we'll stay with 10 right now, is and 11, is when I met Don, I had a bunch of unfinished amends. And that was not because I was lazy or I didn't want to make them. That was sponsor directed. You know, it is, and it's probably divine order and perfect timing. There's nothing wrong with any of this, right? But I had a bunch of unfinished amends with like girls, and I had one guy tell me, you don't need to make amends to her. She already knows how much of an ass you are. And, like that's the point of it. And a bunch of other amends, like I sat on my hands in Alcoholics Anonymous saying things that I heard people say. I was in the Navy. I was on 2 Western Pacific deployments. I've caused harm all over this planet. I have. And what I heard in AA is, well, if God ever puts them in my life, I'll make that amend, like it's God's job, Or I wouldn't know who that person is if they were in the room. I'll just make living amends and live differently, which isn't in our book. And so I got hooked up with Don, and his approach was, is if I harmed you, I owe you, period. And he introduced me to a really cool thing that's right out of our big book, and it says some people can't be seen. We send them an honest letter. So I started writing letters to all these people I harmed all over the planet. I don't know their names. I just put, to the Marine on the street corner in Hong Kong. And I wrote what I would say to the guy, and then go somewhere and speak it to them all. Made amends to them all. Prior to that experience of making amends to them all, it almost felt like a resistance to 10 and 11. It wasn't natural. The idea of being able to watch was how I approached step 10. It was like I would report bad behavior. That was, in essence, my 10th step. I'd screw up and I'd call the sponsor and tell him what I did. That was my 10th step, which is okay to do. I mean, we want to be transparent. But it's not really what the 10th step asks us to do. And prayer and meditation seemed impossible. I still had prior to amends, I still had like a monkey mind going on. It just seemed I couldn't get settled. And so I think doing all of the steps prior to 10 and 11, completing them is real important. Often I'll get guys that want to start over or, do something. It's like, well, where are you at now? And they're stopping right not even in the middle of their amends. And they want to start over. It's like, no. How about we finish it? Yep. I'm not going to take you back through here to help you try and manage your life better with spiritual principles. How about we just finish this stuff? We were talking a lot today about, I heard a lot. I mentioned this in the 10th step upstairs about this thing we call a spiritual malady. And personally, I think the real spiritual malady is I listen to a narrative in my mind that tells me I have a spiritual malady. If you do the work in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're going to stand up here and say you're a recovered alcoholic, you ought to be able to say you don't have a spiritual malady. We're in the game. We're awake. There's no spiritual malady going on here, right? Why wouldn't we claim that? Being small doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't. It will keep your ego intact, is all that'll do. What does the book say? When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. There it is. It's not my opinion. I got an interesting one with that. I sponsor a guy down in Oklahoma. I'm getting way off track now. But So I met this kid, his name's Josh. Their group had me down there to do a big book weekend, and so, they pick me up, and we go to the place, and it's a room about half of the size of this room. There's probably 10 round tables set up, and it was supposed to be like a home group thing, maybe 40 people. I love that kind of setting. And only like 5 guys showed up, right? And one guy came in late, this kid named Josh. And he walked in the room, and he's walking on 2 canes, and he's struggling. I mean, he's struggling, and he's struggling to sit down. And, I just said, hi, glad you're here. And we started talking some more, and they were just jabbering about how pissed off they were that the rest of the home group didn't show up. And I said, you guys, this is perfect. This number is exactly what it's supposed to be. What do you want to do? It's your dime. What do you want me to do? And they said, show us how you take guys through the big book. So we can do that. So we spent a weekend showing them that. And this Josh kid started calling me like, hey, I got a guy to this point. What do I do now? And I'd share some stuff with him. A few days later, hey, I got another guy to this point. What do I do? I got a guy to this point. And finally, I just said, hey, Josh, man, how about you and I go through this stuff, and then you'll know what to do. And he's like, you'd do that? Of course I will. You know what I mean? It's just, of course. And we started that journey. So 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more with him, he would call and we'd read this book. I didn't know what was going on with Josh. I didn't know what the struggle was, but Josh has MS. The weekend I met him, that week, his doctors had told him to get his affairs in order. He had picked his pallbearers. He'd picked the songs for his funeral. He got his affairs in order. In October, that'll be 11 years ago. And if Josh walked in the room right now, you wouldn't know he had MS. No canes, nothing. Wyatt was right. The age of miracles is still with us. Right? That's the kind of power that goes on here. I know a lot of people in AA, and I think Josh is the most active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in the world right now. Seriously. This guy, he has MS. He's got holes in his brain and in his spinal cords. The doctors don't know why he's still living. Right? He got a purpose. When he came to that point in the book, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally. He was all in with it, man. Seriously. Completely all the way in. He's like, okay, God, let's see what happens here. He spends all day, every day, 8-10 hours a day on the phone, taking people through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous all over this world. That's what God has done with that guy. Isn't that something? It's unbelievable. I love talking to that guy. He calls me every Friday night. We visit. Just unbelievable. I don't know what that has to do with 10, 11. Yeah, so I don't really want to read stuff. So meditation, one of the things I love about our book is it like, I was given, it's right out, like given, take the bridle off of this thing and go explore. I mean, do what's in the book, but it talks in here about, go check out, talk to people, read books, do all that stuff. And I've done a lot of that. I love that stuff. And I don't think I'm seeking anymore. I have a relationship with God, but I love visiting the relationship. That's what that's like for me today. A friend of mine says that this way, and it's probably a better description. He says, I know what a starlit night looks like, but I still love to go out and look at it. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it is. So, but I started exploring a lot of different, stuff with prayer and meditation, and traveled and did a lot of, whatever I got pulled to do. I floated things out to the universe. I've always been interested in like some native kind of approach to this stuff, and I floated that out. If I'm supposed to follow that red road in any way, help me to be aware of the teacher that I know you'll put in my path. 2 days later, I'm sitting across the table from a full-blood Lakota guy, and he's telling me, you have to go meet my brother. He's a holy man out on Rosebud. Just floating a prayer and following it. And that's kind of been my experience with the 11th step. Just following stuff. People will recommend books. That's one of my favorite things. Hear somebody talking about a book, and I love reading. I never used to, you know what I mean? I mean, I wasn't a good student in high school, but it's all part of that, going and looking at the stars. I love reading about people's experiences with this power. I think meditation at some point, we get like past the techniques. Because I don't think it really begins with a technique. I think it begins with an ending. Really. Like a no BS kind of ending to managing, controlling, wanting to be somewhere different or somebody different or any of that stuff. I think that's where real meditation began with me, because it really opened me up to what's left is the center, where they've all been pointing this whole time, I feel like I should read something here. I don't know if I'm gonna, but yeah, I was thinking too about, this just came to me, like what David was talking about. I mean, we've joked about that a little bit this weekend, and I like laughter. It's funny because I don't laugh a lot, but I like it. I'm just kind of I'm kind of that guy, just kind of. I love to hear you laugh. David was talking about like time being an illusion. You're right, David. No such thing. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Start reading some stuff that opens up that door and exploring that, and that really it's it's just so clear. It's like the guy behind the curtain hanging up there, the healing and stuff that he did what we would call a couple thousand years ago, that never stopped. You know what I mean? It's one continual present moment. I had fun with that for a while because I like stuff that kind of blows my mind. Yeah, that was a fun one. Even with like what we were like, what happened, what's now, it's like all the same thread of experience. It's all one thing. It's just all this eternal moment, which is a very cool place to experience prayer and meditation from, rather than it being it's almost like AA. Like before this sobriety, I always looked at AA as like a place to go and life a thing to do, you know? And it's not. It's a spiritual walk. It's a spiritual way of living. And I don't want to drink again. And I don't want to hurt anybody again. I want to grow in understanding and effectiveness of this power. And I think that's what we all want. Probably especially the people in this room spending a weekend away from their, homes. And I think that's what we all want here. Maybe to find a path to peace and happiness. I looked for so long for that stuff through objective, like out here stuff, like you were talking about, Mike. Things needed to be different, this needed whatever. If I could do that, whatever, wear like you dress it up. And it's all just, it's all, I think this isn't about good and bad or right or wrong. It's all good and necessary. We go through stuff and find out, well, that's, I've been around enough and done enough stuff to be in a position in my life now where I'm completely open to how I might see things right now can be changed. I am 100% open to that one. I hope that stays there. And like has been talked about by some of you men and women from this podium this weekend about your love for Alcoholics Anonymous, I share that. And I hope to always be teachable here, to be a student here, right? To be committed to this stuff in my life. I mean, what am I going to do? If this is going to be my life, why not really make it my life? If you want to have the experience of Alcoholics Anonymous and a real taste of freedom that's been talked about this weekend, do AA. It's kind of a saying some of us have back in Iowa. It's like, some will come up in our lives, some calamity or whatever, and we'll be talking to each other about it. It's like, well, just do AA. But we know what that looks like. That doesn't mean go to a meeting. That's like be all in here. And I think I've had the best sponsorship and friends in AA that are available to an AA member. I really do, and I hope you guys feel the same. If you don't, if you're kind of new to this bunch, God dang, man, like hook up with somebody. Have the experience of going through that book. And when that experience happens, you will not be able to not do that with someone else. It ain't about making a choice to do that. I can't believe, I mean, holy crap, how many, it ain't about numbers. But I had no idea what I was dipping my toe into when I made that phone call to Don Pritz. I had no idea. Didn't know what I was missing. And I was missing it all. And I think that is probably a good place to stop. I love you guys.